It's as if in Haneke's world, in Haneke's films, people look at each other, but don't see each other. They talk to each other, but don't really have a conversation or dialogue. It seems that everyone is lonely in their own world. Each of characters is completely involved in his or her own problem. They are not even able to come close to an answer to their own problem, so they don't have enough time to help anyone else. In this world, humans don't have the ability to communicate with each other, and any incident can cause misunderstanding and fight between them, like the incident in front of the police station and the fight and conflict between George and the bike rider. George is only concerned with himself, his TV show, being famous, his reputation, and all the stories related to him. Here, perhaps similar to reality, each character, especially George, looks at everything from his own point of view and doesn't try to put himself in another person's place and look from his or her point of view for change. He sees the past as follows. He was a 6-year-old child, and when another person was added to his family, he had to share his mother's love and affection, his father's attention, and a part of home he lived in with the new member of the family. But he didn't want to share anything because he knew all of them only for himself. He doesn't like to share everything he has, especially with a person who was giving orders to just a few days ago, who wasn't at his social level, who he knew as his worker. So he asks himself, why do I have to raise him to my level for no reason? Why should he become my brother and have the equal privilege with me? So George gives himself the right to make various accusations against Majid and make an excuse to expel him from his physical and emotional territory. This grit to keep everything we had yesterday and even gets more is part of the animal nature of humans. It's probably a survival mechanism. However, in some characters like George, it's extremely bold. Majid didn't easily fall for George's trap and didn't do anything wrong. So George took advantage of his naivety and returned himself and Majid to their past positions, past states. Son of the master and son of the peasant. Majid was an oppressed boy whose only sin was that he did what his former master asked him to do without any question. He wasn't used to being George's brother, so he was doing his job according to habits and his daily schedule. Majid cut off the rooster's head without knowing the consequences of what he did. Because for him and his father, what was important was to do what was asked of them. George tells his parents Majid cut off the rooster's head to scare me. At this time, considering the staging and the amount of blood on the axe and Majid's head and face, they believe George and sent Majid to the orphanage. Because of George's lie, Majid lost the opportunity to have a better life. Until now, when he has become a relatively fat middle-aged man, he misses and regrets the life he didn't have and the person who he could have become by staying with that family. He's extremely sad because he can neither change nor let go of his past. And is also more involved in her work and the limits of her relationship with her publisher, Pierre. It's not easy to say exactly if they're two close friends or, as her son says, and he has seen them somewhere, they're in a relationship. They're spending a lot of time together and betraying their partners under the guise of being two close friends and colleagues. Maybe Piero saw the same scene that we saw, but because of the way that they were close to each other, kissing Anne's hand and resting her head on Pierre's shoulder, he thought that his mother was betraying his father with one of their best friends. When George thought that Majid had stolen his son, it was revealed that this suspicion was the main reason why he didn't return home. Part of George's jealousy can be seen in his son. Here again we see that a stranger enters Piero's physical and emotional territory and he doesn't want to share his mother's love with anyone else. People are constantly bumping into each other like a pendulum. They're getting far from each other and getting close to each other, but there's no understanding and communication between them. This issue is due to lack of human dialogue between them. It's as if each of them is speaking a series of mental monologues out loud to the person in front of them. The other person is again so busy with what he's saying that he either doesn't hear the voice of the person in front of him or he hears it and doesn't have a proper response. They stand in front of each other, but they're living in two different worlds. And they can't imagine themselves in the world of the person in front of them. Because they have no mentality towards it. George cannot put himself in Magic's place and realize what a good life he has lost by going to the orphanage. He can't accept that this disappointing life that Majid has is not only the result of Majid's actions and decisions, but also has something to do with his lies, with George's lies. If only George could admit he made a mistake as a child, at least give him a small apology, at least give some comfort to Majid, at least say, I made a mistake then. What can I do for you now? Majid had a hard life. At first, his parents were killed in the demonstration for being Arabs. Then he was first adopted in the house where he was a worker, and after that he was taken out of there because of unquestioning obedience to an order. Majid was humiliated in that house. He was probably humiliated many times in the orphanage. He had a disappointing life. And now the person who denies him a better life 40 years ago with his lie enters his life again, accuses him, threatens him, humiliates him in front of his son by taking the police to his door and arrest both of them. Somehow he realizes that his son is also feeling the same humiliations that he felt for years, and he considers it his own fault. Majid is desperate because there is nothing he can do to prevent these events, because he doesn't have the power, he didn't have the family he should have, he wasn't in the society he should have, because the life he has, the appearance and the race he has, and the money he doesn't have. He gets out of his apparent peace and can no longer bear the life condemned to him, so he decides to commit suicide. The way he committed suicide is strange, because he wanted George to be a witness and to hold himself responsible in a way, and on the other hand he could exonerate himself at least from one of the accusations. According to the last scene and the friendly relationship between George's son and Majid's son, these videos can be considered their work. Children always play an important role in Haneke's movies, and they are doing actions and often being guilty, such as in the film White Ribbon, Benny's Widow, and this film. Like some psychologists, MICHAEL HANEKE believes that children aren't necessarily innocent and can make the biggest mistakes. Children's actions should also have consequences. Their actions and behavior should be looked at more seriously, because their actions, like an adult, can be harmful consciously or unconsciously. In short, George doesn't want to see things from Majid's point of view, even though his job in his television program is to criticize and see from the other people's point of view. He doesn't want himself or his conscience to wake up from the deep sleep they're in. Here it becomes clear that he only maintains an appearance in front of the camera and isn't really an intellectual and enlightened person. So very simply, if he feels the danger of waking up with a few sleeping pills and a few phone calls, he makes sure that no one wakes him up and falls back into his deep sleep and remains in the darkness of his existence. In this movie, everyone is guilty, from Piero and Majid's son, who in a childish way intend to do something similar to revenge and punish George, until George, with his action as a child and kept denying it, in the end, despite knowing about the incident, he didn't criticize her husband's behavior, so maybe with his apology to Majid, something else would happen. The name of the movie is very appropriate and connected to its theme. Hidden reminds once again that we only see the appearance of people and their lives, and we are unaware of the inner reality of their lives and themselves. Maybe it's better to keep everything hidden. This way the world seems more beautiful. Or maybe, for make a difference, we must be willing to look and even stare at the blinding light of truth. George, who no longer has anything to cover his dirty inner self, continues to slumber in the dark. He is still waiting for someone to wake him up.